All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pintcast, a podcast that saves physical therapists from missing out on amazing insight, remarkable ideas, and motivational stories here in the world of physical therapy. Before we start the show, I do want to share that we've got another organization helping to keep the show on the air and support the program. And while they're doing that, they're also helping to educate you, the physical therapist or physical therapist assistant, about a topic that might be popping up, well, now probably more than ever, and that's CBD. You hear that term pop up, and an organization led by a physician exists now that kind of cuts through all the information and maybe some misinformation out there to give you the latest information about CBD. You won't be prescribing them. That's not really what PTs do. But if your patients are taking it, you want to know how it'll affect them during your treatment. So you want to have the latest up-to-date information so you'll feel confident that you have the latest and understand it. So here's what we want you to do. Go to cbdrxforyou.com, and that's the number 4, cbdrxforyou.com. Check out their educational links and begin speaking confidently and clearly about understanding what this CBD thing is and how it might affect your patients in their course of treatment. So head out to that website, cbdrxforyou.com, so you can stop feeling overwhelmed about the use of CBD and start speaking confidently about it. Plus, at the website right now, ptpintcast.com, we're going to be giving away some of these pint glasses as well from our friends at cbdrxforyou.com. Now that is out of the way, I'm excited for tonight's show. We're going to talk about, and whenever we talk about this topic, we get a lot of downloads and a lot of stuff online, a lot of hype, because I think it's a topic that really pushes people's buttons, myself included. We're talking about student loans, and there's a lot of things that are happening in the news around that could change the spin on the ball in your loans. And you want to make sure you have the up-to-date and latest information so you can make really great informed decisions. To do that, we need smart people. So, Bridget, let's start the show. All right, let's do this thing right here on PT Pintcast. Tonight, our first guest is the CEO and founder of FitBucks, which helps professionals like physical therapists strategize, conquer, and ultimately save money on their student loan repayment. He's the guy we turn to, so you should too. Welcome him to the show as a returning guest, Joe Renke, on the program.
Thanks for having me back. It's always fun, so I'm always enthusiastic and excited to be here, so thanks for having me.
Excited, man. I always, turn to you, whether it's on an episode or it's me texting you in the background or sliding into your Facebook group going, all right, so what does this mean, man? So you're almost like, the horse whisperer of kind of student loans. You're the guy who's like, okay, I read that article, translate that for me. So first of all, excited to have you back on the show. We re-racked and second podcast episode of the night. We do want to thank our friends from Owens Recovery Science for supporting the program as well. A single source for PTs looking for certification in personalized blood flow restriction rehabilitation training. BFR, the cool kids are calling it. If you want to apply it properly in your clinical practice, find them online at owensrecoveryscience.com. So, Joe, news popped up. And where did I see it first? On Joe's Facebook page. So I urge people to go follow FitBucks on all the platforms so you find out when stuff like this pops up. Big, like this one, or small. Little things can affect student loan, and that affects your life in a big way. So, Joe, what just popped up in the news?
The big thing was last March, they passed the CARES Act. They extend, where you had zero payments, zero interest on your student loans. It's supposed to be done through September of last year. President Trump extended it through December. Then he just extended it through January, and everybody thought that it was either going to end in January or that President Biden was just going to extend it through the first quarter of this year. The news came out, and he did a lot more than that. He extended it for 9 more months, all the way through September. And it was like, oh shit, that's a little bit different. I mean, at most, we had heard through the second quarter. I heard some stuff from Washington that it was through September, but that chatter never really got a lot of ground and never gained a lot of ground. So I didn't put a lot of stock into it. And then all of a sudden it was just it's September. It's wow. All right. So no interest, no payments through September.
So that's the macro. That's the writing on the wall. That's what's fixed. No interest. And if you have payments, you don't have to make them. You don't have to make them through September. We will let people know if you're watching this live. Drop your questions, comments, concerns below, and we'll try to get to some of those live if we have time. If Joe has time, but Joe always has time. Kind of after the show can kind of come through because this is what he does. Yep. Website, Joe. If people want to interact with you afterwards, where do you like to send them?
Fitbucks.com or our Facebook group. Just the Fitbucks official. It's on Facebook, so you can just type that in. We don't really respond to the stuff on our page, but in a group, like we respond on Facebook. But more so, just fitbucks.com, build your profile, schedule a call, and we'll just go through it.
Yeah, he's. I mean, the Sherpa through your student loan kind of journey is what Joe gets to do. All right, so we set it up: no payments and no interest through September. So this sounds good. Right. So I feel I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to say this probably is good, but I'm going to guess it depends on like kind of where you are. And there's going to be other factors, which is why we bring you in. So what's this mean for everybody, or what does it mean for subsets of people with loans right now?
Yeah. So there's four main pieces I really got to think about how to take advantage of this stuff. Before I even get to those, though, this extension only goes for direct loans. So that's about 85% of federal loans that are out there. So basically anybody that got a loan, I would say past, I think it was like 2010 or something like that. Those are all direct loans. Anybody that has non-direct loans and they're federal though, they don't qualify. Perkins loans don't qualify. Private loans don't qualify. And so it's only those that basically you took out for like grad school. For example, some of you started undergrad after 2010. It's going to apply to those too. But some of you older people that have student loans, you're still making payment on them. As you know, like this didn't apply to you before, doesn't apply to you now. If you have private loans, again, doesn't apply to you.
So there are some specific. It's not loans; it is direct federal loans, is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and that's the number one question that we got was, does this apply to all loans this time? It's like no, like they just extended the old thing, so It doesn't apply to anything new.
All right. So now that we've got that cleared up, what's the next kind of level of importance, or the next frequently asked question?
Yeah, the first big one is refinancing. All right, everybody wants to know, well, should I refinance or not? At this point on your federal loans, no, absolutely not. I mean, when this thing first happened in like April last year, it was like, hey, look, this is supposed to be expiring then. Interest rates are still low. Maybe think about refinancing. And then the more we heard of, just through the grapevine in the student loan industry that, hey, this thing is going to get extended. This thing's going to get extended. It's like, you know what? Don't refinance. Just keep your money in the bank for the time being, and just stay in the federal loans because you never know with furloughs and shutdowns and all this other stuff. Just keep the money in the bank. There's no reason.
So walk me through that, because refinancing would cost you something right now.
Yeah, So when you refinance, you go from a federal loan to a private loan. So you would go from qualifying for a $0 payment and zero interest to having a payment and an interest rate. So at first, some people are like, "Look, I know it's 0%." I have 7% rates right now, and rates are really low. I can get a 3 or 4% on a refi. So I might as well just do that, knowing that my rates in the long run are going to kick back in. And it's like, most of the time I would say, yeah, I agree with that. But right now, especially because of what's happening, the reason why these are 0% is because of COVID. And I know PTs, most of you guys listening to this are pretty job stable, but back in like March and April, I mean, I would say 75% of our phone calls were with people getting furloughed. And it's like, that is actually one of the bigger benefits of federal loans. Without this special law, you can still go into forbearance and everything if something happened to you. Once you go private loans, you forgive that, or you give that up. So federal loans, don't refinance. If you have a private loan still right now, absolutely. Even if you refinanced them already like a year or two ago, rates are dropped even more. So if you have private loans, yeah, refinance all day long, especially for some of you that are listening to this, you might have graduated recently, maybe like in May, and you're coming out of your grace period and you're starting to make payments on your private loans. Yeah, absolutely. Refinance those. But federal loans, keep it simple right now and don't refinance them.
That's why we bring Joe around, because he's going, listen, don't just, people see 0 and no payments. They start freaking out and go, this is great. Everything's great. Refinance. This sounds good. Click here, click here. And Joe goes, hang on, think about this for a hot second, and then let's talk about it. And that's why we bring Joe around. How many more big frequently asked questions do you typically get? What are they?
The next ones have to do with loan forgiveness. Do these months count? If you're on public service loan forgiveness, yes, it does. We automatically know that. There's some nuances there that I'll touch on. And then the other one is just normal loan forgiveness, so like a 20-year plan. So income-driven repayment plans, pay as you earn, they're supposed to count. The keyword supposed to. At the end of the day, even on PSLF, at the end of the day, you're dealing with the loan servicers, which is basically the federal government. I don't care who it is, Navient, Great Lakes, Fed loans. They're all supposed to be being changed anyways. All of them are supposed to disappear. Everything's supposed to go to studentaid.gov starting this year, but who knows, because it's a different administration. So nobody knows what's going on. Bottom line is the loan servicers can F this up really bad. And so regardless of what you're on, you're going to want to make sure that it's like, look, I was in this plan. Dude, these months should count, especially for those of you that just recently graduated and you're at a nonprofit. You're not already on PSLF, and already you used to have to fight with Fed loans to get time counted. Now it's going to be like you weren't on it before. You're really going to have to fight to say, look, I was in this CARES Act forbearance. I should be getting credit for this. So I can pretty much guarantee you that probably about 90% of the people listening to this are going to have to fight for these months to count.
Best thing they can do to arm themselves. Document
everything. Just document everything. Like, especially on PSLF, there's an employment certification form. Just have your employer fill it out to show proof of the date you started working full time. So that way you have just everything ready to go. And like I said, I'm hoping like Fed loans, I already know what they're going to do. They're just going to give everybody that was in PSLF already, they're just going to give them blanket forgiveness for the entire time period. But that's if you were in it before. So if you're a new grad and you were in it before, what are they going to do?
Right.
And so you're going to have to fight them. I can pretty much guarantee that, just because we have to fight them all day long anyways. But now this is a wrinkle. And like I said, a lot of them were preparing not to even be in business anymore because they were switching over. The federal government was. So a lot of these loan services just threw up their hands and just said, F it, we don't care. Like, we'll just tell the public X, Y, Z, and we're not going to be here around anyways by the time this stuff rolls out. So just be prepared to fight for that.
So I would say the biggest thing that I always see you kind of share is document so you can defend yourself or maybe go on offense. And the second would be, don't believe a lot of things that you just read from people spouting things, especially in the comment section of social media. Like, look for an expert, look for things that are grounded in fact.
Yeah.
All right,
so that's the second one. The third big one, and this actually doesn't have anything to do with student loans themselves. It actually is having how student loans affect somewhere else in finance, and that's actually mortgages. So like we're expanding into the mortgage industry. Actually, we're starting to get licensed right now already in Texas and a few other states, and doing some other stuff with asset management and everything. But mortgages is a big one. So what ends up happening is when you're on forbearance, a payment doesn't show up on your credit report. Okay. So if you go to qualify for a house, there's this ratio called the DTI ratio, debt to income. And basically what that says is you cannot have, for like a first-time home buyer's loan, you cannot have more than 43% of your gross monthly income going to debt. That's all debt. So student loans, mortgages, property, car, all that stuff. So like if you make $1,000 a month, 430 of it has to be less going towards those things. So what happens when you're on forbearance and your student loans, there is no monthly payments on the credit report. So they assume on an FHA loan a 1% monthly fee or a monthly payment. So that means like if I have 200 grand in student loans, and my loans are in forbearance, they assume that my monthly payment is $2,000 a month for my student loans. So bottom line is, it's going to be really hard to get a mortgage because your payment, your hypothetical payment that they're using for your student loans is really, really big. And that happens a lot of times with FHA loans anyways, like, because they always take 1%. The big difference is with what's called Fannie Mae loans, where you put 10% down on your down payment for a house. Typically what they do is they'll take the monthly payment that's on your student loans. Okay. They won't take zero if you're in forbearance. They, again, use a percentage, and it makes it harder. So bottom line is, if you're in forbearance on your student loans and you're going to buy a house, it may be harder. That doesn't mean you can't do it. Like, you still might qualify, but you might be disqualified. Dude, I've seen it. I probably see it 3 or 4 times a week. We get a call like, I got disqualified because of my DTI ratio, and it was because of my student loans. And then the quick answer to that, and again, I know I'm going a lot into nuts and bolts. You can go back on a student loan repayment plan. You can do like a graduated 25-year extended plan that will hit your credit report. You go and get the mortgage. Once you get the mortgage and the house, you turn around and put your loans back on the forbearance. Like, so there's ways around it, but just know that, hey, if I'm going to go get a house and this 0% thing is going on, there might be some red flags and some hoops I got to jump through to get to that loan.
I think the takeaway for that point is there's some other things to consider, because paying your student loan isn't necessarily the only thing you're doing or trying to do at this phase in your life, and realize that these different things can interact with each other. So this is why people like Joe exist.
Yeah.
Dig into this stuff. All right. What else in terms of the
that's big number 3. Big number 4, the last one. This is the most important piece, I would say. And that's why I wanted to end with this. Like, you have to understand that this whole 0% thing was not done to help people because of COVID. Okay. Because if it was, like, if you think about this, like if I lost my job because of COVID, I can always go on the income-driven repayment plan and have a $0 monthly payment. I can always go into forbearance, even without this 0%, 0 monthly payment thing. I can do that stuff already. So like when you hear a politician like Joe Biden say we have to do this because people are making the decision between paying rent, and their student loans, that's not the case. Like student loans, there's no reason why like a person that lost their job because of COVID would have a payment anyways. So why did President Trump actually do this? And why did Joe Biden actually extend it through September? It all has to do with numbers, GDP. We're a consumer economy, okay? And this is where it hits grad students a lot. Grad student default rates are very, very, very low. And those that are not losing their jobs right now are grad students. You guys can make payments on these things, okay? The government knows that. And they want you to turn around and say, you don't need to make a payment, because what they're hoping is that you're going to go and spend money elsewhere.
Buy a TV.
Exactly. Buy a TV, subscribe to this. Why not? You're sitting at home. What else are you doing? You might as well subscribe to this, do this, do this. They want you to buy. That's the only reason why they're doing it.
So psychologically, it's saying, hey, no payments. Hey, let's make it. I could be safe and save, or I could make it rain.
Exactly. So Trump did it because it was done through September. And actually, if you looked at the history, he did it through September because Congress and Democrats didn't want it to keep going past the election, because they didn't want the economy to start doing better right before the election. So it ended in September, and then he actually extended it through December. And the first day, Nancy Pelosi came out and said they were going to sue him to stop it because he did it through an executive order, not through Congress. And then like the Democrats did a bunch of polls and saw how bad that was for their image right before the election, so they just let it go. Where now Joe Biden's here. And it's like, well, my first 9 months, we need to try to get this economy pumping to make it look like I'm doing great. And then I did something fantastic. So with that being said, again, I had like, guys have heard me on other podcasts, on Jimmy's stuff, on our own, just in general. Like I just analyze politics because it's like, what are they doing? So that way I know where to put my money.
Right. How to affect your money.
Yeah. And my thing is like, if the government is trying to get you to spend, do the opposite. Like that's how you know what to do, right? So in this situation, save. If you're doing a payoff strategy, I know some of you want to make payments. It doesn't cost you anything to keep the money in the bank for the time being. Just don't spend it. Save it, just because you never know what's going to happen over the next few months with COVID and everything. So save it. And then August time period, September, go in and make a huge lump sum payment. Like fantastic, knock it down. Psychologically, if you want to make like $5,000 payments, $2,000 payments here and there, do it. If you're on a loan forgiveness plan already and you need to save for like the tax liability at the end of it and everything, save. Just save as much as you can. Save. And one thing on that, if you are a new grad, okay, that didn't work last year, you may actually want to tell them, I want to go on a repayment plan and actually go onto it if you're choosing to do a loan forgiveness plan. And the reason being is you can use your tax return from last year. So you have zero income, which means you lock in $0 payments for 12 months. So if you do that right now, it's February, you have a $0 payment through February of next year. It doesn't matter what the government does. Right. If they end this in September, if they extend it, doesn't matter. You automatically have a $0 payment. Might as well go into it. So the bottom line is be smart about it. First of all, don't go out there and just blow a bunch of money. Use this to your advantage. Save. You guys are grad students. Your guys are DPTs. Make good income. Put the money in your pocket. Save. Payoff strategy. Save it till like a month or so before. Make the big payment. That's the general advice that we're giving. Income-driven repayment plans, just save as much as you can. And if you're new grad and you're going loan forgiveness on an income-driven repayment plan, try to go into it and have a $0 payment because of your income, not because of the forbearance. And then you get it for 12 months instead of the next 9 months.
See, I told you guys it was more complicated than that. That's why I'm bringing it around. The website again, and I urge you to check this out, is fitbucks.com, and that's bucks with an X, fitbucks.com. And from there, you can find Joe and that organization's social media accounts, which you just listen to what he just said. Sounds pretty good, and go look it up. So Joe, we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you for that, man. We appreciate the good information, man.
Yeah, and then the exciting news too, I wanted to share with you. I know last time we were chatting, we were starting to build out a new financial planning technology.
Correct.
We started beta testing it in November. It's out. That's why I know all this stuff about the mortgages and all these other things.
So real briefly, what is it? Why should someone interact with it? What does it do for them?
It is everything financial. So before we could just say, hey, here's the student loans, and this is the repercussion between these different plans on your overall plan. And then you can track your student loans. Now we can do everything. We can say, look, how much do you want to do your 401k, your IRA, saving for a house, planning for a marriage, kids, moving, whatever it is. You can simulate all these different events. And then you can say, that's the plan I want to do with everything. So student loans, mortgage repayment, 401k, you can hit save. It saves your plan down right on the dashboard. You link your financial accounts and track everything instead of just your student loans. So it's been fun testing. That's why cool. If you're watching this, I got some black eyes, is because between staying up all night testing that and getting hit in my eyes from my daughter, my 3-year-old, playing dinosaurs and kicking me in the face with her foot that she thinks is a tail. But yeah, that's out. It's been fun testing it, and it's out.
That piece of software is going to change from it depends, right? Because there's a lot of variables, to dependable. We're going to put all the variables in here. We're going to hit run. It's going to figure them all out and say, well, that's what this will do. Change more two variables. Oh, that's what this will do.
Yep. Bingo.
Right. Test that out. I'll be calling you. I need to do that. I think this is a good time to reflect and reevaluate and figure out what we should be doing. And you don't want to hear it depends. You want to hear dependable. So that's what this does.
They've been calling this the Great Reset, right? Trudeau and Canada has been calling it all this stuff. I mean, the way you can think about this, no matter where you're at financially, it could be a reset for you no matter what, because these next 9 months, if you have student loans and you don't have to make the payment, you can use that to right the ship with credit card debt. If you have that, you can right the ship to have an emergency fund. It can right the ship for just bills catching up. Especially, like I said, most of you DPTs will have jobs right now. So you have income coming in. Take advantage of this time period. Don't waste it.
I love it. Fitbucks.com. Joe, appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Want to say thanks to our friends from Fusion Med Staffing. We thanked them in the last show. They're a new sponsor this year in 2021. As a travel PT or PTA, you get to decide where, when, and how you do what you do best, which is provide quality care to your patients. They have a traveler-first mentality, which means you get full control of your healthcare career so you can create the travel lifestyle you love and, frankly, you deserve. With detailed job transparency, which is ultimately what you want. What does this job look like? Where is it? What am I going to be doing? They have it, that transparency. You can seriously choose your own adventure with that. Start your adventure at fusionmedstaff.com. That's fusionmedstaff.com. Our next guest, these things just fall into place. Our next guest actually reached out when he saw we were going to be talking about the loan situation with Joe from FitBucks. And he's like, hey, I'm going to throw this out here. I've done a paper on this. And I've done some research. So a physical therapist who recently wrote a research report in JOPT, that's Journal of Physical Therapy Education. The paper was called A National Survey of Accrued Student Loan Debt by Doctor of Physical Therapy Students. Welcome in, Justin Berry. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jimmy. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling better about understanding a lot of the different things that are happening. I knew it was more complicated than, yay, it's no payments and no interest through September. And a lot of it is, well, it depends. So it's, and I'm sure physical therapy educators and PTA educators love to use that phrase, which is, it depends.
Daily. I think daily.
Daily. So Justin, welcome to the program. You get to educate students on a daily basis, but you penned this article, did some research into it. So let's go macro to micro. First of all, what'd you look at? Why'd you decide to look at this particular information?
You bet. Kind of one of my research interests is kind of some professional topics and educational topics. Over the past 5-10 years, I've looked at things like burnout within physical therapy. I've looked at productivity, job satisfaction. and student loan debt. And the more I kind of looked at student loan debt and read the articles out there already, everyone knows it's a problem. We're an issue within physical therapy. I just wanted to look at it a little different way to see how much of a problem it is in regard to manageability of student loan debt.
Right. I mean, not a lot of people out there are going to be super excited about student loan debt, but it is part of the cost of going to school is going into to debt. Students coming out with different levels of debt. I mean, I've seen some Twitter conversation, and all this subjective, but students throwing out exactly the amount of debt they have, and some people, maybe some clinicians who are a little bit older, just calling BS and saying there's no possible way that you're in that much debt. And I've seen students taking screenshots of their payments and their current debt and saying, here it is. We're not joking. We're not lying. So when you looked at this, what were the big results from the survey that you did?
Well, the big results of the study were heard from a little over 700 DPT students right before graduation in 2019. 91% of them had at least some level of student loan debt.
Okay.
One thing I looked at too was the difference in student loan debt between graduates from public and private institutions.
Yeah.
That was public institutions for all debt, including DPT, schooling, and undergrad, was about 103,000. And for private institutions was about 138,000. The big thing I was curious about, though, is how manageable that was. And I'm glad that Joe talked about debt to income ratio.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a couple different ways that you can define manageable student loan debt. One definition is having less debt at the time of graduation than you'd make in your first year of employment. And the other is the debt to income ratio. Historically, they've looked at a 10% debt to income ratio for student loan debt, but there has been some research showing that when you make a little more money, you can have that raise higher. So other researchers have recommended that about 15% for physical therapists. What this study shown was for the participants in the study, 75% of them would not meet 10-year loan repayment guidelines.
Oof. So just, I don't want to skip ahead. So that means if they paid what rate, they wouldn't pay off that loan in 10 years.
Correct. They couldn't, based on the 15% debt.
There's no possible way they could make enough to take 15% of their income and pay it off in a decade.
Right, and that was based on estimated of participants, their average estimated starting salary, which was really close to other places that's published for starting salary for PTs. So that sounds bad. 75% wouldn't be able to pay off their loans in 10 years. It gets worse though. There was 38.7% would not meet loan payment guidelines for a fixed 25-year loan, and 21.4% would not meet guidelines to pay off their loan in a 25-year graduated loan, where you pay less earlier on, but you pay more later, and there's a lot more interest added to that balance over time.
So how does this make you feel as an educator, as someone in the profession, and hoping this profession keeps going?
I mean, it's a problem. It's not a problem just in physical therapy. I know there's a lot of other health professions that have similar issues, and just income for physical therapists has gone up a lot lower than educational costs. So I don't know what the definite solution is to the problem, but I think it's definitely a pretty big problem within our profession.
Well, let's tie in two different things, student loan information and burnout, two things that you said you had a passion for researching. How can those two things intersect? How can burnout become an issue in physical therapy due to debt with this in the equation?
Right. Well, I think that's a big part of it. There's been some studies looking at, productivity, that with productivity requirements, higher productivity requirements could lead to more burnout or less job satisfaction. And if you have, let's say, whatever, $150,000 in student loan debt, and you're at a job you don't like, but it pays $5 an hour more than a setting you may want to work at, you may feel forced to stay in that job. Or people may take jobs in settings or areas where they necessarily don't want to be long term, but
they'll look money first, which is exactly what your professors have spent 3 years telling you not to do. Yeah. But when you're faced with a bill, sometimes you got to make decisions, and a lot of times you make concessions. I'll just do this for a year or two to make some payments, and the next thing you know, it's 5 or 10 years down the line in your career. Exactly. Wow. What issues do you see new grads facing with student loans? Lack of jobs, COVID, because now we get even more spin on the ball. You're talking about, in a normal time, right? And I guess precedented times before 2020, but now there's some things on top of this.
Right. And I think it makes it even harder. And I'm glad now sounds like there's some leeway for individuals to start making payments, which is great. But kind of like Joe was saying too, if individuals have high levels of loans, it's going to make it difficult for them to buy a house or a car. There has been research for all graduate students showing that high levels of student loan debt, people sometimes will delay getting married or having children or contributing to a retirement account. So it's not a short-term issue that it can cause. I think it can cause problems for many years down the road for some new grads.
Yeah, I was reading an article just the other day in preparation for this conversation tonight, and they were talking about how millennials are particularly deciding exactly what you just mentioned, a house or get married. And a lot of them are choosing the house because that feels tangible, and they'll just throw a party in their backyard. Many of them were commented as saying. And then with a 50% divorce rate on a good day, they're saying now you're dealing with having to divide an asset with someone you just got divorced to. So it's putting a lot of different pressures on areas in people's life, both professional and personal.
Right. I know there was an APTA survey out a couple years ago that showed that about 50% of new graduate PTs would be interested in serving and practicing a couple of years in a medically underserved area for maybe, I think it was, don't quote me on this, I think it was $50,000 to help with student loan debt. So I think lobbying for additional loan repayment plans would be great, both at the national level and the state level, or whatever we can do. That's maybe not the full solution, but at least it could be part of the problem.
Yeah. You've got motivated individuals who are generally altruistic and genuinely want to help. They go into that profession, into this profession for that reason, and they come out, and all of a sudden there's that cold slap of reality setting in, and then trying to figure out, where do I fit in this big world, and how can I make my way? And I think many of us have had this conversation before. We realize we're probably not going to get rich being physical therapists, but do we have to be necessarily decided as poor to do it as well? Any resources or things that you would point the audience towards that would be valuable, things that they should check out before they go in the profession, during or after graduation?
I'd say before. I think one thing that'd be helpful, and I put this in kind of the discussion portion of my study, is PT programs are required to post graduate outcome data. They have to state what percentage of graduates pass their licensure exam and what their employment rates are. I think it would be helpful for schools too to post what maybe average student loan debt is and what their average graduates making per year. I think that would help too people to make some more choices and kind of look at that a little more too.
Yeah, it's unique, Justin. I mean, you had more than 700 respondents to this survey. People typically pretty open about how much they owe. People not that open in talking about how much they make. That is, for some reason, better or for worse, people get really, really whispery when talking about how much they earn. And I've read some articles online, opinion pieces in terms saying that really only benefits employers. If employees started talking about how much they were compensated, they start to look around and say, hey, I'm either super low on the spectrum, I'm in the middle, or I'm super high. Maybe that average would start to kind of lean up, because a lot of times the employer has the bargaining power because they have the job, they have the purse strings. Maybe it would help to start share some of that data. But for some reason, in the United States at least, it's something that's kind of whispered about or not talked about at all.
Yeah, I think another thing that could help too, in the study, we asked students if they received any financial education about that and everything in their DPT program. About 35% said they did, and I looked to see if there's a difference between total debt between those who did and did not receive it. It wasn't statistically significant, but they did have about $3,400 less in student loan debt. So I think that might be something easy to add on to within PT programs, and maybe it has to be right away first semester talking about it, and that might be something helpful too.
Yeah, education. We talk about that being, part of the solution. Justin, appreciate you stopping by and sharing this. Again, we've placed the article link in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, on Twitter, or on Facebook, and we'll put it in the show notes if you're listening to it on the podcast. Justin, appreciate you stopping by and sharing this, and thanks for doing it.
All right, thank you.
All right, third guest tonight. I like how this lined up. We brought Joe in first with a financial expert. We had Justin doing the research from the education and the student angle. And now we get to bring in our third guest tonight, Third guest is a physical therapist who has an interest in finance after receiving his bachelor's degree in economics and finding it essential to study the banking and financial industries. Now practicing physical therapist. Let's welcome to the show, Mike Maker. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Jimmy. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Mike, we actually met. We met, what, 2018?
2017 CSM the first time.
I was close. But then didn't I visit? You went to school at where? You went to Staten Island, right?
College of Staten Island, yeah.
College of Staten Island. So you've been practicing since what, 2018 is when you graduated?
Yeah, I graduated in 2018, yeah.
All right. So give people like kind of your superhero backstory after graduating. You know, who do you get to help in the community? Where do you get to practice?
I kind of bounce around. But right now I'm at a place called Good Health Physical Therapy and Wellness. It's an outpatient clinic in Portland, Oregon. We specialize in the treatment of people with hypermobility. It's a lot of young females, but a wide spectrum of people coming in with very unique zebra-like presentations. And we kind of have to figure out the complex puzzle and how to help them out there. Yeah.
You're really putting that differential diagnosis to work probably each and every day with patients like that. I like that. So you, like a weird dude who has a radio background who becomes a PT, you've got a pretty cool, interesting, and non-traditional background. Really studying economics and finance before becoming a physical therapist. We see you all over Twitter kind of having these conversations because you have that experience. You know, what gets you excited about having those conversations within the profession? What are the topics that you see being conversed about a lot in terms of loans or economics and finance?
Well, I mean, there's always this talk like about passion versus like money. And, you know, it's a big topic because at first people are always like, well, you got to pick passion. Like passion is the most important thing. And I agree. Passion is important. You know, you don't want to go to a job you hate. That's why I kind of got out into this straight business world because like it's kind of boring and dry. And I mean, I'm a Jets fan. We just hired a coach who quit from the finance world after 9/11. He quit his finance job to go into coaching because that was his passion. So passion is important, but if your debt is so overwhelming that it ruins everything from the passion thing, that becomes something that's no longer a passion project, but just a pit of misery.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate thing. Like, you know, I've actually talked to educators in our field who have told me like their peers at other institutions that are private don't want to send their kids to the schools where they teach because the school is too expensive in their opinion. So if you think about that, like they don't get scholarships for their kids for physical therapy school. They're not going to send their kids to PT school at their ultra elite private program. Maybe you should think about that too. Like, is that worth it for you?
So you're talking about kind of an equation there. We've mentioned a few times in this episode, debt to income ratio. It's really passion to income ratio, right? Well,
right.
What will you do for free? What will you do, you know, for money? And then where's that balance of what I should be paid appropriately for my value that I can provide? We've brought up before on this program this theory, this Japanese idea of ikigai, which is kind of this four-circled Venn diagram. And I love me a good Venn diagram. But around the horn in that is what you're good at, what the world needs, what you love. And the bottom one, the one people kind of go, ooh, is that important, is what can you get paid for? And you know, I'm all for doing things altruistically, but if I can't pay for cornflakes and rent and my Netflix, I do need some Netflix right now because we're in a pandemic. It's going to be difficult to make ends meet, as they say. So you need to approach that. So coming from your background, I wanted to make sure the audience was well versed in your background. What things do you think students should look for with student loan management? What should be on their, you know, list of things to become educated in?
Okay. So one of the things, the reason you have me on is we talked briefly about Navient. So Navient is a servicer that is basically hired by the government to handle these federal loans on their behalf. Navient makes money keeping you on the loan. They don't want you to pay off the loan. And there's even a podcast that's one of the reasons we talked was if you look up 7-minute rule and you look up the name Michael Lewis, he has a podcast where one of the episodes talks about this rule at Navient customer service. They can only keep you up to 7 minutes on average.
On the phone?
And then on the phone, and then get you out. Like, figure out a way to get you off the phone. Because if you're looking for help and you take longer, that's wasting time, and they don't care about giving you a solution. So they give you a half solution or a fake solution. So that way you think your problem is solved, and then they move on to the next person. And it seems great and all in the moment, but they're really just screwing you over.
And that's even if you get through the 800 number. We don't even need to go down the rabbit hole of the fact that, I'm literally watching PTs complaining about health systems and reimbursements and extension of care plans if you even get to a human being. So they're really hiding behind this kind of machine mentality, which is, we can keep you at bay as long as we check the boxes. We're in business to keep you. Yeah, you want to pay $50 a month? That's great, because you're still accruing interest, and we're big fans of that. You can't lose. You can't go into bankruptcy with your student loan. It's always going to be there. It's death, taxes, and student loans.
Yep. And you see that, even in undergrad, there were people already saying that I'm always going to have my student loan. My parents had it, and I'm going to have it. And I think that's honestly a horrible mentality. You should go in being able to pay off your debt. Yeah. You shouldn't have to live with it. But it's becoming a norm almost.
Yeah, and we don't have to get into, there's a lot of ageism and bashing of those who are younger. Right? Usually ageism, we think of older and patients who are seasoned in life, but a lot of times these kids today, they just want a free education, and that's not really what I'm hearing. I think students are okay with paying for their education, but a pound of flesh and for the rest of your life, probably, I don't know if that's fair. The counter argument, though, Mike, is, well, you knew what you were getting into, okay? And it's hard to kind of argue with that. So, we just heard from Justin, maybe education needs to be, early in PT curricula, or maybe even before PT curricula. So what recommendations do you have for students and new clinicians who are starting out paying these loans, or maybe just before they begin to pay their loans? What would you recommend, things that they can look into or do?
This is a hard question. So, because you're already in it, it's now too late to right the ship completely to avoid this. You're going to have to think about other financial opportunities. I know a guy named Brandon Smith. He's on Facebook. I think he's a little bit on Twitter. He's on Instagram. He'll talk with people about setting up a side business. So that's a one concept. Another idea is, and this is a compromise. You talked about it earlier in this podcast about, like, maybe you do a home health job that maybe you didn't want to do. But look, I'll tell you, maybe you discover home health is your thing. So it's not all bad. You just need to go into it and explore and be open-minded and understand that. I actually had this conversation with you before. You mentioned this to me when you were in Staten Island. You don't really fully know what you want to do. Maybe you really think so, but you don't until you're in it. And so maybe it gives you an opportunity to learn some things and realize, like, yeah, this really wasn't for me, but at least you'll make more income so you can pay some of that debt off, especially given the no interest period that Joe was highlighting. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think, in terms of side jobs, 100%, or maybe pick up another PT job. I mean, a lot of PTs I know, they even call it their loan job. They'll do, hey, I do PRN at this acute care or this SNF, and I'm on the schedule once a month. Maybe one weekend a month, like National Guard, right? 1 week a year, 1 weekend a month, and they say, listen, I'm doing this for a reason, and it kind of helps people kind of rationalize it, right? Hey, listen, my Monday through Friday job, my 40-hour-a-week job, that is my housing, that is my Netflix, that's my TV, that's my car. And then 1 weekend a month, I just bite the bullet and I go in and I say, this is my weekend. I put my head down and this is my loan payment. And that's how I'm rectifying this lifestyle that I choose. I think to not have to have a podcast episode like this 5-6 years from now, there needs to be some change in a system that is much larger than us. I would love to know the solution. Justin, an educator, an academic, and a researcher who looks into this says, I don't have the solution. My job is to look at what is right now. It's for other people to decide what to do. But in terms of refinance, and that's something that comes up a lot when students are thinking about it. Joe touched upon it. You've got kind of a little bit background on that. Like, briefly describe what it is. When should someone consider looking into it with their loans specifically?
Well, I'm gonna go like very, very vaguely because I'm not a financial consultant. Like you have to have a license, but I will say that usually, if you're in a situation where you do have to make payments, and there is an interest rate that's a certain amount, and you want to save money, you should, and you're willing to cut down on the period, you should refinance. I personally refinanced long before this crisis started. I refinanced because I was very dedicated to paying off my loan as soon as possible. So within reason. So I went through Joe actually to help me figure out what were my options because I wanted it to be as convenient as possible. He's a great resource, FitBucks. And we just figured out, well, based on what I'm willing to do, 7-year refinance, there you go. Right now, he's right. You shouldn't refinance. Like, honestly, you would be basically shooting yourself in the foot financially if you refinance.
And this is why you pay attention to people like Joe, who do this on a regular basis, who really pay attention. Anything I didn't bring up, anything else that I didn't cover, you'd want to share, in terms of your not only background in finance, in terms of education, but at being a clinician in the beginning of your career.
I wanted to add, like, another option is maybe people can consider the U.S. military as an option for their loan repayment because they are very, very nice about that. But the only thing I can say is, like, it's a really hard time. I really appreciate what new grads are going through. Like, it's not so simple to get that other job, any job, really. I mean, Juliet was talking about it before we started recording. Like, it's really, really hard. I know people who went for months and couldn't find a job. And you know what? Do what you can and be forgiving of yourself. Right now, it's hard. It's called just try to keep your chin up and push through. That's the only thing I can say because it is a tough time.
Just keep swimming. Well, the thing we were reiterating through pretty much most of 2020 when the latest class of PT students were graduating was this is a reflection on the time and the current economy and the current situation. This is not a reflection on you as a human. It's very difficult, though, to dissociate those things if you are a graduate and not getting a job. So I will say those two things. Say, hey, listen, feel better, relax, and feel better and relax are like the last thing you want to say to someone in crisis. But what I really wanted to say to people, and will still say if you're still looking for that job, or maybe you lost a job or been furloughed, is this is a reflection of the time and the situation. This is not a reflection on you personally. Try to keep that in mind if that's any solace there. Mike, since you're the last guest, you get to play the parting shot. You ready to do the parting shot?
Sure.
Here we go. Parting shot brought to you by our friends from the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. They know you want to be a confident, up-to-date orthopedic physical therapist. In order to do that, you need an easy way to get the latest information so you can best serve your patients. That's it. Problem is, there's a lot of information out there all the time. I mean, the good thing about research is it's good. We learn things. And the bad thing is there's so much of it. So how do you sort through it? Well, that's where the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy comes in. They think it's just plain wrong not to have the latest information for your patients. So they know what it's like to feel overwhelmed, and they sort through it. That's why they have created current concepts of orthopedic PT. To get it, go to orthopt.org, register for current concepts of orthopedic PT, and then begin your journey to being a confident and current orthopedic PT. And maybe, if you'd like, take that OCS exam. It's a great prep material for it. Again, find out more and take current concepts at orthopt.org. Mike, you're in a unique position because you got to listen to the first two guests and you have your own insight. So parting shot, your chance for a mic drop moment. What do you want to leave with the audience tonight?
Don't refinance. I think Joe said it. I think that's, if you're listening to this, hoping for advice, don't refinance. Try to save your money. Be careful, be smart, and be empathetic to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not about you. This is a bad time for everyone, and it's not your fault. Let me emphasize that.
Yeah, I'd say the overarching, there's some themes with the episode tonight, which is, Justin proved it with research. This is happening to a lot of people, right? And you're in that situation. Be smart. Find experts. We like to tell patients all the time, hey, low back pain, that's my thing. I'm a PT, or I'm the shoulder guy. People like Joe, they're experts. Find experts and talk to them about what they're experts at. Mike, appreciate your insights and sharing information with us tonight, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.